I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He's the author of the book Unknown Soldier World War One, no other than Mr. David Preston.
Thank you for having me, Daniel.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. David, and can you please introduce yourself?
Well, like you said, my name is David Preston. I am a first-time author. This is my first ever book. I live in Alabama, Mobile, Alabama, to be specific. And I've lived here for 30 years. And I'm a recovering journalist, political columnist, and politician as well. So, this kind of, I'm also a history nerd, so this subject kind of interested me. And, and so here we are. I'm, promoting my first ever book.
Thank you for your sharing your talent to the world, Mr. David, and what inspired you to become an author.
Well, ever since I was a kid and I visited the Tomb of the Unknown at Arlington National Cemetery, I've always thought, what would the lives of the soldiers be like if we knew who they were? And that idea has always stuck with me, ever since then. And, just doing different research throughout the years, I finally decided after my triple bypass open heart surgery in March of last year to just buckle down and start writing. Because, no better time than the present to get it done than then. So I started doing research for this project. And I always knew I wanted one of my main characters to be from Alabama, having lived here for over 30 years. It was just kind of natural. And in doing my research, I came across the Alabama 167th National Guard unit that fought in the Rainbow Division, the famed Rainbow Division in World War One. And when reading about their service in World War One and their service in general, I was like, I knew I had to write the World War One book about these guys.
Can you tell us about the writing process of Unknown Soldier?
Well, like I said, I was doing just general research on the Tomb of the Unknown and how they selected the bodies to be buried there and so forth and so forth. And when I was in that research, I came across the fact that the Rainbow Division fought in the same battles where the dead from those battles were buried in one of the cemeteries where they selected bodies for internment in the tomb. And if you're not familiar with the process that they went through to select the World War One soldier, what they did is they selected 3 different unknown bodies from the cemeteries throughout Europe, put them in identical caskets, and continuously moved them around, and let a Medal of Honor winner select which casket would be buried at the tomb. And yes, that's how that body came to be buried there. Well, so we don't know who which body was selected from which cemetery and so forth. That's the whole purpose of the Tomb of the Unknown. And so when I discovered that this unit fought in those battles and some of their real life experiences, also with that Alabama connection, it just made sense for me to write this book about the Alabama 167th.
What challenges have you faced in writing Unknown Soldier?
Well, I've had to. I went through at least 4 different, rewrites, drafts in the process. So, I mean, it took me from the time I actually started writing until the actual publication of the book took me a little over a year. And I went through it, wrote it, sent it to my editor, got those notes back, made changes based off of those suggestions, sent it out to several reviewers, got those back, made changes again based off of those suggestions, and then went through it a final time with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that I could get every single wrong word, misspelling, errant letter or errant number that was in the manuscript as I possibly could before publication. And so that's why I went through it at least 4 times before publication.
What authors or books have influenced your writing, Unknown Soldier?
Well, I'm a huge fan I've always been a huge fan of legal thrillers and political spy thrillers. So authors like John Grisham and Brad Thor and Vince Flynn, I've always enjoyed reading them. I also like reading a lot of nonfiction books too, about history, and people like Paula Webb and Mike Bunn, who are local historians in the Mobile, Alabama area. Especially Mike Bunn, have really greatly influenced not only my writing style but my approach to researching these projects as well.
Can you share a memorable moment from your writing, Unknown Soldier?
Well, the most memorable story from the book, and this was a fictional account of a real life story that was relayed in documentation I was able to find. Now, have I been able to actually prove that this happened? I don't know. It could end up being an old soldier's tale, but it was still good enough that I was like, I have to put this in the book. But the story is this. I came across a story where supposedly soldiers from the 167th, while during their service on the Western Front in France, snuck into no man's land one evening and hung a banner from a fence line in no man's land facing the Germans that said, "Give your heart to God because your ass belongs to Alabama." And I was like, well, that's just quintessential, not only quintessential soldiers, but that's quintessential Alabama. So that story has to go in the book, even if it ends up being an old soldier's tale. It's still good enough, too good to not put in the book.
Yes, for sure. So, what advice do you have for aspiring writers like you?
No matter what level of writing skills you have, no matter what, if you think you're a good writer or think your idea is good or not, just start writing, because you can't finish a book until you start it. So just start writing. Once you start writing, the ideas will start coming to yourself. They'll start coming, they'll start flowing, and you'll actually end up having to, be like, your mind will start racing ahead with ideas of what you want to incorporate into the book from the point that you're at now. So you'll have to make notes on, make sure that I include this, make sure I include that, because if you don't want to forget that, obviously. But as you start writing the book, the ideas start flowing, and then once you're done writing, you've got you've a first draft of a manuscript.
Very well said, Mr. David. But before we go on, I want to shout out our listeners from Indonesia. Thank you, Indonesia, for supporting this podcast, because in Jakarta, I got 57% audience share, West Java 15, Bali, Central Java, East Java, Jambi, and North Sumatra. Thank you, Indonesia, for supporting this podcast, because this podcast is created to empower writers, authors all over the world, like Mr. David Preston. And of course, listen notes for my listen score of 27 and belong to 10% popular show globally. So, Mr. David, how do you balance writing with the other aspect of your life?
It's hard to do, but you just got to make time. Sometimes you got to sacrifice, things that you may want to do, like play video games or read books or watch television, to make time to write. But I encourage people, if you're interested in writing a book, to make that time to start writing your book, because it's an enjoyable process, and the world that you create when you're writing will be very enthralling, and you'll be into the world and the characters. I mean, like, for example, when I got done writing this book, obviously because of the title Unknown Soldier World War One, the main character had to die off in the end, because I mean that's how he ends up in the tomb, obviously. But I was kind of sad when that happened, because I invested myself in the story while writing it, and it's a very enjoyable and experience. So I would just encourage people to make the time to write, even if it's even if it's on your work break when you're working and you get a lunch break, write, because that's an opportunity for you to create characters and worlds that you and other people may thoroughly enjoy.
Yes, definitely. Right. And stop procrastinating, people. If you have the passion of writing, go for it or for it. So, what are some themes or topics that you are passionate about exploring in your writing?
Obviously, this book is the first book in what's going to be a series of 4 books for each soldier that's buried. One for each that's buried in the Tomb of the Unknown, World War One, World War Two, Korea, and Vietnam. I'm also really big into U.S. Civil War history. I grew up going to Civil War battlefields instead of Disneyland and Six Flags for summer vacation. So I've got a few ideas I'm mulling around there. I just finished up a draft for a book called 1828. That's an alternate historical fiction novel that's going to end up being an indictment of the 2024 U.S. presidential election and the candidates in it, because it's coming out at the beginning of September. So, but it's based off based off of the presidential rematch of 1828 between John Quincy Adams and Andrew Jackson, and of course, it's an alternate history. So I'm not going to tell you what happens in it, but other than it, it's an indictment of the creating an alternate universe that will end up being an indictment of the 2024 election and the candidates in it. And then I'm currently working on a modern day organized crime mob murder book that's based out of New Orleans right now that should be later out around the end of the year.
Looking forward for that, Mr. David. So, how has your writing evolved over time since the publication of Unknown Soldier?
Well, the biggest thing that I've learned in this whole process, at least for me, is it's extremely helpful for me to run my manuscript through a text-to-speech synthesizer, one of these websites that you can get on, and you can put in the text and it'll read the text, because those are programmed to basically read whatever you input. So every errant letter, like P's and Q's and T's, and every errant number, you'll catch those, and even every word that may be spelled correctly but may not be a good fit for the manuscript, you'll catch those as you're reading along with the voice, because like I said, all it's programmed to do is spit out what you input. So
Definitely. Well, how do you handle feedback or criticism of your work?
well, I'm always open to constructive criticism, constructive feedback, and I've gotten some constructive feedback already on the book, and it's when in the writing process, I send it out to several people to read, and then get their comments back and incorporate what suggestions they have for the storyline and the plot into the rewrite, because I think doing that just makes the book better.
For sure. So, what are some of your goals or aspirations as a writer?
To tell stories. Like I said, this book, The Unknown Soldier, is actually going to end up being a series. So I want to tell I want to tell as authentic real life stories as possible about these characters that I developed based off of real life people and real life situations. And I want people to feel like they know the characters when they're done reading the book. That's my ultimate goal.
For sure, looking forward that your goal will come true, Mr. David. So, how do you think the publishing industry is changing, and what does it mean for the authors?
Well, obviously, with the advent of self-publishing and the Amazon KDP and Ingram Spark, it's it's a much more democratized world, and you don't have to have a traditional publisher to get your idea and get your book out there. And there's certainly all sorts of services out there that people can pay to help them get their books, self-published. But and it's real easy. But the biggest takeaway is the harder you're willing to work, no matter how you're published, traditional publisher, vanity publisher, self-publishing, no matter how you choose to publish, the harder you work, the more successful you're going to be. Because if you're not, if you just put it out on Amazon KDP and then you don't ever do any promotional efforts like going on podcasts like Book 101 or getting reviews or getting them trying to get in bookstores, it's not going to sell well. But if you get out there and you pound the pavement, slap the leather, so to speak, to get your book out there, more people are going to see it, more people are going to buy it, more people are going to want to read it, and that's going to make you more successful as an author.
Definitely, people. Marketing. Once you wrote a book, you need to market it to become a successful, to become bestseller, as they said. So, Mr. David, can you read your favorite chapter of your book?
Well, I don't have it up here in front of me, so that would it would take a minute. But like I said, some of my favorite parts of the book is, like I said, that story about the banner that says "Give your heart to God because your ass belongs to Alabama." Another thing that I really enjoyed in the writing process, is, throughout the book, my main character frequently writes letters back to home, specifically to his younger sister Maggie. And that's a good way. That was a good way for me to convey a lot of real life stories that happened to the Alabama 167th in France, and in training in France, and even on their Mexican border service before their entrance into World War I, without having to go too in depth into the that particular story. Like, for example, the 167th, in my book, James writes a letter to his sister about meeting Helen Keller, who happens to be one of his sister's idols. And of course, if you're not familiar with who Helen Keller was, she was a deaf and blind girl that went on to be a successful author in her own right. In the early 1900s, and she's from Alabama. So she overcame, deafness and blindness to be able to, become an author. And so, so those kind of things, I really enjoyed developing those stories and those storylines and those plots, and conveying those real life stories through a fictional setting.
Definitely. And thank you for sharing your talents to the world. But before we go on, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, Food 101, our fourth season with Chef Alessandro, one of the best executive chef in one of five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. So please do listen to our latest episode. We talk about our culinary courses, people, culinary courses. We have volume 1, basic, volume 2, fundamental, and volume 3, principles. If you want to create a delicious food, please do purchase our culinary courses. And so please do listen, Food 101 on our fourth season. So, Mr. David, how do you approach writing for different genres or audiences?
Well, it's not really a different process per se. Maybe the research is different for different genres, but because like I said, I'm working on a modern day organized crime mob murder book right now, and that research was different than the research for this one, because it's more of a completely made up story. It's so the research was more into the culture of New Orleans, names, different name variations for names of characters that I wanted in the book, that kind of stuff. But the process is pretty much the same. You develop, come up with the idea for the book, develop the outline, start writing the book, outlining characters, start developing the book, and then once you've developed the manuscript, start getting feedback from editors and reviewers on where they think that you can improve the storyline, and going back and making those changes, and then publishing the book once you feel confident that the book is ready to be put out there.
What is something you wish you had known when you are first started writing?
Oh Lord, that's an interesting question. Just how long it really does take to write a book, and how much time that that you spend, even if you're not actually doing the physical writing of the book, you spend a lot of time thinking about your characters, thinking about your plot, developing your characters, and developing your plot, and so you're always thinking about it, even if you're not writing it.
Very well said, Mr. David. So, how do you hope your unknown soldier will be remembered or appreciated by future generations?
Well, like I said, I hope that people, when they read the book, they come away with a better understanding of not only the characters in the book and how those characters live their lives, but how the men of the Alabama 167th especially live their lives, their real life lives, in war, at home, and in the lead up to war. Because, like I said, these characters are based, and their experiences are based off of real life experiences of real life people that served in World War I and served in the Alabama 167th.
Definitely. So, people, I just want to plug in our Book 101 Review Foundation, which is empowering less fortunate children all over the world. Let's empower less fortunate children through their education because they are our future generations. So, Mr. David, can you please invite our listeners to support Unknown Soldier?
Yes, absolutely. And if you haven't already, you do need to go to Daniel's GoFundMe page to support children, because, like he said, they are the future. And if we don't help less fortunate kids, then our future is in trouble. But if you want a copy of Unknown Soldier World War One, it's on Amazon. It's on all the Amazon marketplaces throughout the world. It's on Barnes and Nobles, Books and Million, almost anywhere online that you can get a book or an ebook. It's there. I haven't gone to every single website to see if it's there, but I've set up for distribution, pretty much wide distribution around the world for anybody and everybody that wants either a physical copy or an ebook copy to get their hands on one.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. David Preston because if you support him, more books to come. And you are most welcome to come back to promote your second book, Mr. David.
Thank you, and I absolutely look forward to coming back and talking with you again.
Yes. So, Mr. David, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Morning, people. See you soon.